Let's see what a little Holy Sober Insight says today. Comparing our drinking to others is a common mistake when women are rethinking their drinking. They often identify someone they think drinks more than them and conclude, at least I don't drink as much as they do. The only factor that should be considered is if you think you have a problem, then you do. But it doesn't always have to be a lifelong sentence and an incurable disease diagnosis. I hope that lands well for you. And the reason why I chose this is, well, let's start with what your writing prompt is today. Your writing prompt today is my problem with how I drink is. Now, most people will probably have a tendency to look at that and think, oh, my problem with drinking is I'm sleeping too long, or I'm getting in fights with my spouse, or that's not what I'm talking about here. My problem with how I drink is it's something completely different. And I'm going to tell you a little story about that gal that I interviewed, and I will call her, let's see, what will I call her so I don't call her real name? I believe her interview is posted on my blog, but I'm not sure. So we'll call her Candy. So I interviewed Candy a few years ago, back in 2013, 2013. And she was telling me how she was highly regarded in her place of employment. You know, she wore the sharp suits. She was very well liked. She's very attractive. I mean, she had it all going on. And every now and again, she would always be invited to the after hours, and every now and again she would show up and she would sip on her cocktail. She would engage in the small talk, and then after her one cocktail, she'd leave. Everything looked fine. Now, this really plays to when we're looking at other people and comparing our drinking, because what people didn't realize is that when she left the after hours, she would actually stop and get a bottle of booze on her way home, and she would drink that entire bottle of booze, and she would have no idea what happened and wake up to her mother taking care of her, caring for her. And so she had a blackout. So if somebody compared themselves to her drinking, they never know. And guess what? Her life is none of your business. What's more important is, how do you feel about your drinking? What is your problem with your drinking? Not what society suggests or the governing agencies, you're only supposed to have one drink per day. Not what pop culture says or the recovery movement. This is all about you. What is your problem with how you drink? If there was nobody out there saying, if you're drinking more than one drink a day, then you have a problem. If you didn't hear this messaging, would you have a problem with your drinking? Is it society that you're listening to? Is it somebody else's feedback you're listening to? And the reason why this is important is because you need to take 100% ownership of this. If this is your problem with your drinking, understand why that is. Because then when you understand why it is, when you're looking at the whole picture, you're creating evidence. You're stacking that evidence. You're building a case on that, on the ideal that you want to be something else. You want to do something else with your life. So it's important that we understand where our judgments, beliefs, and ideals come from. So the way your measuring tool, don't compare yourself to other people's drinking, and get this out on paper. Don't just watch these videos, really write it out. And if you're not going to get the actual journal, at least get a notebook and start writing it out, because that is where you're going to have the dedication and the commitment and the investment from your finger to your pen to your paper. You're going to unravel the truth, and that is something that is anchored in you, and then you own it. It's yours, and that's when you'll start making the changes. Neuroscience tells us that if I tell you what to do, if I say you can't drink, and so you try not to drink, you have no ownership in that. Your brain will only light up in the imaging. It only lights up like in one or two spots. But when you're inspired and you come up with your own answers, your own resolve, then it shows up where your brain will light up in multiple places. It glows. So that's ownership. That really shows us that it's ownership. So put your pen to paper, do this work. Don't just watch the videos if you are, and be prepared for change. You cannot not change during this process, I promise you.